In ancient times, there was a proverb that said, "From this column to that column, deliverance awaits." Be sure to like this video and subscribe, as we journey back to ancient Iran to explore this proverb, a gem you might just find useful in your own life later on. In an era not too long past, a man named Daniel traveled to a foreign city to fulfill a task. He knew no one there, and he spent the entire day wandering its streets and squares. But that day was destined to turn ominous. For on that very day, horrifying events unfolded. A man was murdered, plunging the citizens into a state of terror. The guards, searching for the killer, spotted Daniel near the scene of the crime. He was a stranger, no one knew him, and worst of all, he had no way to prove his innocence. And so, they arrested him and brought him before the judge. The judge, who had no evidence to defend Daniel, confidently sentenced him to death. No one objected. The next day, they brought him to the city square and tied him to a pillar to be executed. No matter how much he shouted that he was innocent, no matter how much he begged for a moment of reflection, no one paid attention to him. The executioner was ready to carry out the sentence, holding the judge's decree in his hand. But before he finished, he asked Daniel, "What are your last wishes?" Knowing he had no choice, Daniel thought for a moment and then said in a quiet voice, "Please tie me to another pillar and then execute me." The executioner, pretending that this was just an excuse to escape, laughed and said, "What a ridiculous request. What difference does this pillar make from that pillar?" But Daniel replied calmly and firmly, "The custom is that the last person sentenced to death is executed if no harm is done to anyone." The executioner, not wanting to break tradition, carefully untied Daniel's hands and tied him to the next pillar. At that moment, the ruler passed by and saw a large crowd around the square. The ruler asked, "What's going on? What happened here?" The ruler stepped forward, glanced at Daniel, and said in surprise, "This man is innocent. Have you not received the judge's new order?" The executioner, bewildered, replied, "The last order I have is this execution warrant." Taking a deep breath, the ruler said, "The real killer came to my palace last night. Fearing that this man's innocence would be blamed on him, he confessed his crime in terror. I sent him to the judge, and now the order to cancel this execution has been issued." A strange silence fell on the square. The executioner quickly released Daniel. The traveler, who had not yet recovered from the shock, smiled and said, "If you had not tied me from this pillar to that pillar, I would have lost my life by now. If God wills, from this pillar to that pillar is a way out." And thus, this proverb became permanent among the people.